welcome back. This is Conversations with Kibby. Today I have a former teacher, still works in education in a roundabout way, had 20 plus years in the classroom and now works for Big Brothers Big Sisters and is doing noble work on that end as well. Please, everybody, help me welcome Mrs. Michelle Brisenhand to the podcast.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm so great. There should be two of me.
You know how this goes. Tell me something you will never forget about your time as an educator.
Oh gosh. As I've been thinking about this, I was thinking I need to give kind of the PG versions. I have some R, I have some one that's kind of X, but I think about I love teaching. Like honestly, I loved hanging out. I mostly spent my time in high schools, and a lot of people are scared of that, but I freaking loved high school kids. They have personalities, they have thoughts and feelings, lots of feelings. And so, yeah, I loved it. I got out of teaching really just so I could hang out with my own kids and spend a little bit more time with that. And then in a roundabout way, and here's probably one of my favorite stories about teaching, about how it comes back. You mentioned I working for Big Brothers Big Sisters. I'd been out of teaching for a couple of years, was subbing, doing some consulting work, working at a preschool, helping out a former teacher friend of mine who needed somebody. And I got a phone call from a former student. And she's an attorney here in town where I live. And I've kept in touch with her through the years. She's also someone that I was a student council sponsor for a number of years. And her sister and an older sibling that I also knew had gone through that and had worked with them, and it was her. And I said, oh, hey, what's going on? And we'd met for coffee a few times, and she goes, hey, I want to meet you for coffee. And I said, okay. And she said, I want to talk to you about something. I have a project. I said, that's fantastic. So we met for coffee and we're catching up on life, and she'd just opened a law practice and doing all the things, and I was asking about her parents and things like that. And she goes, hey, do you remember when we were in student council, you guys used to talk about leadership training, and you talked about how good leaders lead in times of need, and that sometimes you step up when nobody else does. And, sometimes you just have to be the voice of change and be the person to take that step. And I said, oh, absolutely. And she opens up this file folder that she's got. It's like a manila file folder. And she starts handing me across. I used to hang positive affirmations. I'd put them on like 8.5 by 11 cardstock, and I'd hang them on the leaders' lockers once a week or so. That was like, be the change, or, whatever the catchphrase was at the time. And she'd kept all of those. And here she is. She's been through law school. I mean, this is like 10 years later at least. And I go, oh my gosh, because I knew what they were right away. And she said, so here's the deal. She said, I am on the board for our local Big Brothers Big Sisters. And she said, we need to have somebody who has a bachelor's degree, and preferably somebody with teaching experience, come in and work for us. They were going through a leadership change. The executive director had left. They were in the process of hiring a new director, but they needed somebody to oversee our matches that we had, which was a lot of child safety stuff, adults and kids, and making sure that things were being safe and everything was above board. And she said, I immediately thought of you, and I knew you weren't in the classroom anymore. And so, hey, B, this is one of those times where we need somebody, a good leader needs to step up and lead. Would you do that for me? And here I am sitting across the table from a former student who's throwing my own words back at me. And I'm like, I don't know how to say no to that. She goes, good. Can you start January 1st? And this is like 2 days before Christmas. And I went, well, tell me about the job. But here I am 8 years later. And truly, I got this job that my own words came back and kicked me in the butt later when those things came back. So it's probably one of my favorite full circle moments that's happened since I, have been teaching for a while. I thought that was pretty funny.
You know that moment when your mouth opens and you say something that your parents used to say to you, and
absolutely.
You're like, oh, it has happened.
Yeah, it happened. It totally. And I couldn't even argue with her, because she was right. She's like, you're not in the classroom anymore, and you're so good with kids. Like, she starts buttering me up with all the things, but I'm looking at that file folder and I cannot believe she still had it. So that was pretty funny. And like, just how you can give back and the impact you do have, you don't even think about it. And I mean, I put those signs on those lockers all the time, gave them no thought, honestly. And here she is. She kept them. Yep.
I went back home a couple years ago because a couple of brothers that are very good friends of mine, their dad, who I was very close to, passed away, and I wasn't going to be able to make it back in the middle of the week for the funeral, so it was over the weekend when he passed away. As soon as I found out, got in my vehicle and drove 11 hours back home by myself, for the express purpose of going to give them a hug and buy them a beer
And turn around and come back.
and turn around and come back. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm there, I'm going up to get around, and I'm standing there waiting for the bartender, and I can feel eyes over here. There's two guys sitting at the bar, younger guys, old enough to be in a bar, but younger guys. And they're both staring at me, and I'm like, "What's up, gentlemen?" And they said, "Aren't you Kibby?" I was like, "Yes. We had you in an SAT class." And I still remember what exhort means. I still remember, like, they're giving me words that we went through and things that I did in the classroom and things that I said in the classroom that, like you said, you say fleetingly, it's just in the moment, whatever. But that sticks with them, and it shapes part of why they are who they are and how they learn. And it's amazing to hear later on that you did have an impact on somebody.
Well, and I think we sometimes, I don't know, I don't want to say take it for granted, but as teachers, we just kind of, you go through the motions. I never did think about 10 years from now that what's going to happen or whatever. I was get through the year, get you out of, get credit for my class, get you a diploma. Those were the things that my immediate goals for most of the students I worked with. I never anticipated the number of students that I work with. Even today, several of the families I work with now are former students of mine, and their kids are involved in our program and different things. And they'll come in and they always, I don't know if this happens to you, but they always come in and they just look at you and they wait to see if you know who they are. And it's like, it's been 20 years. You were 15 and weighed $110 soaking wet when I had you, and now you're 6'5" and 250, kind of thing. But
I can tell you with those kids, I can tell you where they sat in my class. I may not be able to say your name, but I promise you I'll never forget your face.
Yeah. And I will say, give me a last name or give me a first name. Because, attendance for me was always in my brain. So you'd always say their name every day. I'm like, give me a last name. And I would say, and then they're like, oh yeah, how do you know? And I love it when their own kids are with them and they look at you and they're waiting to see what you're going to say. And they'll go, oh, this was my teacher. And I'll go, so do you want me to give him the truth, or do you want me to give him your dad was my best student ever? And he's like, I was straight A's, right? And I'm like, you were never in my class, dude. You were suspended out half the time. But it's always funny. And the kids' eyes get so big. They're like, Dad, you were bad. And he's like, no, here's my teacher. You should ask. And I'm sitting there going, I kicked you out of my class multiple times. And I said, we'll go with he was memorable is always what I would say.
I'm sure you've had this happen to you before as well. I've had kids return to me and tell me what a difference I've made in their life and how much they like having me in class. And the way I remember this playing out is that I was on that kid's case every day. They drove me up a wall, right? Just pounded on them to try to get them to do what they were supposed to do. And it ends up that attention, even if it was negative attention, was exactly what they needed.
That actually reminds me of a story. This happened, oh gosh, it's probably been about 10 years ago or so. Doorbell rings. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I wasn't expecting anybody. Open it up. It's FedEx guy. And I had to sign for a package. And I opened the door and I almost slammed it shut because standing on my doorstep in the FedEx, uniform and everything, hold my package is one of my former students that I was like, I don't want that child to know where I live. It has been headbutting. I was like, oh my gosh. And he's got the biggest grin on his face. I was like, hey, how's it going? And he starts laughing. He goes, can you believe this? And I said, they gave you a job? And he goes, yeah. He said, I'm not even in jail. Are you surprised? And I went, yeah, kind of. And he goes, no. He goes, I'm good now, miss. I promise. And he goes, when I saw your name, I was hoping it was you. I didn't know. I said, oh, how you doing? And I'm still kind of nervous. And at this point, he's 30, but I'm still thinking this kid. And he tells me the greatest story, though, because he was in a class. I used to teach it's like a workplace readiness class. And we talked about resumes and filling out applications and just dress for success and all that stuff. He goes, I should probably thank you. And I said, why? He goes, you're the reason I got this job. And I said, as a FedEx driver, I haven't had you. And he goes, yeah. He said, when I had to go in for an interview, and he said, I remember you telling me that even if you're applying for a job at McDonald's, take your resume in because that'll set you apart. Someone's going to remember that. He goes, my boss told me I was the only person who applied for the delivery driver that came in with a resume. And I said, well, what resume did you use? He goes, the one I did in high school. It was like 5 years old, but it was fine. And I'm just going, you didn't update it or anything. But he was so proud to tell me that he had used that. And in my head, I'm just thinking, I honestly thought you were in jail or somewhere, whatever. And there he was, and he was so proud of it. And I still just think, yeah, maybe I did make a difference. He's like, yeah, I should thank you for my job at FedEx 10 years later. But
That's
hey, he had a
awesome.
resume, so I guess something resonated with him, right? So that was good.
You've heard me say in a couple of the episodes some of the disasters or must do's in your first year of teaching. Um, what do you got for me?
Secretaries, custodians, lunch ladies. Not necessarily in that order, but certainly if you do not have those three people in your corner, you are never going to survive your first year. Lunch ladies can get you the good stuff. They will also bring you your lunch if you're nice, or they'll set aside your favorite thing if you make a good impression with them. Custodians can decide whether you are on time or not. If you are running late and you forgot your keys, they decide whether you get in. They are also the people who clean up puke and things you don't want to touch, which leads me to bloodborne pathogens. We won't even talk about that video. I just got a meme. Somebody just sent me the meme. I think I might have sent it to you about if your choices are watch the bloodborne pathogen video or jump out of the car. How fast? What's the speed limit before you tell you don't jump out? So true. But they clean up the stuff. But secretaries, I can tell you this is hilarious. My first year teaching, I was young. I turned 21 2 weeks before I started my first teaching job. So I was a baby. Yeah, I was 3 years older than some of the seniors I was teaching, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I have friends, like some of my friends, their younger siblings that I consider friends are your age. Holy cow, what am I going to do? So it's the first year, and I had met with the principal. The secretary was on vacation when I interviewed for the job, got the keys and all that kind of stuff. And, I'm 20 something, just out of college. And I have on, I'll never forget, I had on a pair of athletic shorts, some tennis shoes, a tank top because it was hot as blazes in this building because it wasn't air conditioned. And I had my hair up in a ponytail, looking like a college girl, whatever. And I go bebopping downstairs. I'd been up in my classroom getting stuff set up and I was going to go make copies. And so I go walking into the office and the secretary's there and I hadn't met her. And so I go in, I go over to the copy machine, I type in my code and I start making copies. This lady about comes out of her chair and goes, "Who do you think you are?" And she was an older lady. It was a small rural school. She'd been the secretary there since she graduated high school. She retired from there. So it's pretty much the only job she ever had. And she goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm sorry, am I not supposed to touch this copy machine?" She goes, "You think you can just walk in off the street, some teenager, and use the copy machine however you want?" And I went, "I'm the new special ed teacher. My classroom's upstairs." She goes, "Oh, I'm supposed to believe you're a teacher. Just look at you." And I was going, what? And there's nobody else in the building. And so she didn't know me. She didn't believe me. And I'm standing there going, I don't know what to do. Like I said, I can give you my ID. Well, about then, the building principal happened to walk in and he's like, "Oh," he says her name. I don't want to rest her soul. He goes, "Have you met Miss Michelle? She's our new special ed teacher upstairs." She goes, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. That woman baked me cookies. She if she had leftovers because I was single and young and I was the only single young person, she felt so bad, but I will never forget just that fear of I have never been so scared of another human in my life. I'm just trying to make some copies." But oh man, she took care of me. She was the guardian. She would bulldog for us if there was a parent that was trying to call. She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, they're busy right now. We can't interrupt." She did all the things, but I also saw some of the folks who maybe weren't as kind to her, and she put those parent phone calls right away. Like "Oh yeah, they're waiting for your call," and that kind of stuff. And I was just like, thank you, Lord, that she likes me. And I finally, got her convinced I wasn't some 16-year-old making copies, but whew, that was scary.
Those three people in every building are essential to go make sure that you know their name, that they know who you are, and that you treat them with the utmost of respect, because I promise it's going to benefit you later on.
Well, especially if they've been there a while, like secretaries especially. I don't know if you ran into this, but they know families at that point, right? So there's a lot of stuff that's not in the CUME files when you get them, or if you're looking through, they used to have CUME files. I don't know if they have those anymore. But I remember, one time a secretary sliding a file across the desk and saying, "Just so you know, the big brother is this, the big sister is this, and this. Oh, and their dad is blah, 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 blah here in the community. So before you make that call, you might want to have some things in mind of what you're going to say. I'm like, oh, thank you. If you're new, you don't know that stuff, but the secretaries, they know everybody.
Invaluable information.
Priceless. They do not get paid enough. That is what I have always said. Whatever it is, they need more.
I didn't jump straight into the classroom. I had a roundabout way to get there. So I was 27 when I first started, but I still looked really, don't look at me now, but I still looked really young. And I had 3 different administrators, very large high school in Southern Indiana. 3 different administrators my first week stopped me and asked me for my hall pass.
That's hilarious.
Like I'm on my plan and I'm going down to get materials or whatever. Excuse me, young man. Like, hi, I work here. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, I guess the good news is they're looking out for people that seem suspicious in the building.
Oh my gosh. Oh, did I ever tell you about the seeing somebody suspicious in the building story? I don't think I ever told you this story. We haven't talked about this. So there was one day, I mean, we taught at a pretty big, more urban-ish high school. And this was way back, like the first couple years I was teaching. And I was walking down the hall, and this was before doors were locked. I mean, all the stuff that's in place now. People could walk in, whatever. And I see this guy walking down the hall towards me as my plan period. And I was walking back to my office, and I see this guy. And I mean, he looked rough. Hair down to here, looked like it hadn't been washed in a while, and full goatee, and just ratty layers upon layers of clothes. And I was like, that's interesting. So he's walking down the hall, and I go, excuse me, sir, can I help you? And nope. And he keeps on walking. And I was like, that's weird. And he gets closer and I'm thinking, holy crap, I know this guy. So it was a buddy of mine from high school, from my hometown, who I hadn't seen forever. He was doing some undercover stuff, and he was in the building as part of some drug interdiction stuff that was going on. And nobody, like, there was no discussion because they were trying to keep it top secret. He was undercover. And I about blew his cover because he was walking in the building. I thought he was a homeless guy. Now, mind you, when he was in high school, he was that GQ, all-American, very clean cut, preppy, did all the things. And here he is. And I went, oh my gosh, it was the funniest story. And I saw him, and I just kind of went, oh, okay. Because I remembered, I think he does something. He was working for the Marshals, federal Marshals, actually. And I remember hearing something about that. And I'm like, oh my God, I about blew his cover. And it was several months later. I was back home for, I think, Christmas. And I happened to run into him at the bar. And he was clean shaven again. He'd all cleaned up. He goes, you almost blew about 3 years of undercover work. He said, I totally forgot that you worked in that building. And he said, when I was going in that day, he said they had found the information they needed and were about to make a pretty big, and it was one of the kids in the building. It was his dad that they were after. And so it was kind of a whole thing. I found out the story much later, but boy, I felt bad for that kid. But man, I would have felt terrible if I blew this guy's cover as I'm, excuse me, sir, you just shouldn't be here. I don't think that's safe. And he's undercover.
Aren't U.S. Marshals like the highest?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep, they have authority over everything. Yep. He said, he goes, I don't know why I didn't think about it. He goes, I knew you taught there. He said, because he was actually the younger brother of one of my classmates. So of course I knew him. It was a small town I grew up in. And that was one of my funny, when you said that about people in the building, I was like, oh, I'm out, busted. It was really bad. It was pretty bad. So that was pretty funny.
Hey, just wanted to jump in and let you guys know that Michelle and I are really good friends and could honestly sit around and talk for hours about stuff. So to be honest with you, I didn't realize how long our conversation went. I'm going to have to bust it into 2 different episodes. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Please make sure to jump back next week so that you can enjoy the exciting conclusion of Briz and the His.